You have a billing team, but do you have a strategic partner? You assume that they're managing your revenue and they're submitting claims, posting payments, but are they truly understanding your revenue bottlenecks and getting in front of the issues?
Welcome to NatRevMD, a podcast where we share tips on optimizing medical billing and improving practice efficiency so you can have the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli, founder of NatRevMD. Let's get started.
So most billing teams are basically claims filing teams, right? And we've taken over a number of different both in-house and outsourced revenue teams. And we see a lot of the same thing, right? They're really good at submitting claims, or most of the time they can post payments, work basic denials. They're doing a lot of status follow-ups when it comes to accounts receivable, right? They're calling the insurance, they're making a note, but are they actually resolving the issue? Do they have a mechanism by which they're tracking these and providing these to you in some sort of live manner, right? So the real high value work, the work that actually protects your profit margin long term, is actually being completely ignored. And the reason for this is they may have kind of that low level management in place, right? They have the billers and maybe some coders who are managing it, but it's that high level strategic view of your practice that is missing. And a big reason why we have the model that we do in terms of our managers and senior managers all the way up through our executive team who really know and understand the strategic issues that are going on in a practice. So last year, shared this before, we were doing a bank reconciliation for a new client and found $40,000 in uncollected cash. And they had an in-house billing team, somebody that they completely controlled, but it had been missed. And so obviously larger practice, but still money was real. In this episode, we're going to expose those 8 critical high-value functions that your current billing team is likely not performing and how those gaps are actually likely going to drain your bank account over time, right? So that first year or two may look really good in a billing team, but the long-term view of what your AR looks like and what your metrics and issues that you need to resolve become an increasing issue. So having done this long enough, we know that the one thing that keeps in-house and smaller outsourced billing teams at a disadvantage is some of those tactical high-level things that you need a strategic partner in order to move in the right direction long-term. So things that you are going to walk away with today is my team auditing their own follow-up effectiveness? Are we doing bank reconciliations? Are we proactively evaluating capitated payments? And are you actually identifying issues that need to be fixed in your front office in order to prevent denials? All right, I want to tell you a quick story. We recently onboarded a large practice, and during our standard process, right, we perform a bank reconciliation. So one of our senior managers actually took their bank deposits and was matching them line by line against what was posted. And so we were actually able to look and compare ERAs, what was posted and what was actually deposited. And we recognized that there were some large checks that had been posted, but never deposited into their bank account. Ended up that these checks were actually sitting at the post office and needed to be reissued, again, uncashed, in the tens of thousands of dollars. So huge, incredible win for the practice. Felt really good to help them out and be able to solve that problem and keep that problem solved moving forward. So, of course, their in-house team may have been a really good billing team, but again, they weren't setting up the processes long-term that allowed for the account to stay clean and to stay, resolved when it comes to improved revenue. So, bottom line, insurance companies aren't going to call you and say, hey, you've not cashed these checks. So you have to have a process to manage that. Now, obviously, we've taken over their account for some time now, and it's been great to be partners with them. We've been able to manage not only the bank reconciliation, keeping AR in the right position from a percentage basis, but we've also been able to really understand their capitated agreements and then work with them to negotiate those capitated agreements and then audit that those capitated agreements have been managed appropriately. All right. So pain point, right? You have a claims filing team, not a revenue partner. And filing claims is kind of the easy part, right? You push a button, maybe you're scrubbing the claims. Hopefully you're reviewing those rejections and addressing those. The payments come in from an ERA, right? That's electronic. They may be work denials that show up calling the insurance payer, making notes in the account. But really, that's the bare minimum, right? The struggle comes when the denials pile up, the eligibility issues remain unresolved. There's back and forth via email, but nobody's truly taking accountability. And the billing team can't get an answer from the office. The coding issues can't be figured out. There's just a leadership gap there. And that is really the point of having that higher level strategic partner, because you've got to be able to get these things addressed. That's why we create an issue tracker. It is a live spreadsheet, SharePoint, that goes between us and the office so that it is always clear who's up at bat, right, when it comes to resolving some of these issues. And so when we meet with the practice, those are addressed and taken care of. So if your billing team today doesn't have that leadership to help manage that frontline billing team, those complex process issues, metric development, and management is where you're going to see your practice get stuck. Maybe not in year one, but certainly as your practice continues to grow, that's going to be an issue. So really want to suggest that identifying a true revenue partner is an active strategic part of your practice, right? It is forensics. It is being proactive, is integrating into your operations and not just processing transactions. So we are going to go over kind of those 8 things that you need to ask your billing team about and make sure that they're doing this, right? So we've had our billing company for a little over 4 years now. I've also managed hospital operations for over 12 years. And so really, really key that you get these things down. All right, number 1, audits of payer follow-up. So your team will say, yeah, I work denials, but are they? How often are they touching claims, and is it effective? Are they actually resolving the denial? And sometimes denials, even with appeals, maybe there's a bundling issue or a down coding and the documentation didn't fit it. You may identify those issues and those may need to be written off, which of course always needs to be done with practice approval, right? Never should have something written off without your approval. It's the one thing to call a payer for a status update, but it's another thing to actually follow up and make the necessary changes to get the claim paid. And how often are they following up on these claims? Is it once every 90 days, once every 60 days, once every 30 days? Without that internal audit, you have no idea how your AR is being worked. So we have implemented this within our company so that we are pulling reports, identifying how often those claims are being touched. Are they moving those to completion? All right, number 2. Aggressive AR management. So most teams will accept if they've got 20, 30% of their AR over 90 days. So insurance AR should be less than 20%. Obviously, if you're a high surgical field or you do stuff in the hospital, those claims may take a little bit longer. But for your 100% outpatient clinic, that really should be less than 20%. For your insurance AR over 90 days. Now, we even have some of our practices that are less than 5% and really just depends on the payer mix and the ability to get those eligibility issues resolved quickly with the practice. Obviously, surgeries and hospital-based claims, like I said, take a little longer. They're more complex. But again, you should be pushing for as low as possible. Now, a strategic partner doesn't just work the old claims. They're actually analyzing why those claims are aging and fix the root cause, right? We're coming to you and saying, hey, those are bundled issues, or hey, we've got documentation issues. They're asking for medical records, or there's an eligibility issue. Do you need help with training your front desk? Those are the key activities that you really, really want to make sure that you're getting a grip of. All right, number 3, bank reconciliation. Already told you the great story we talked about with a practice of ours. Again, really, really key to actually take a look at the bank deposits of that day, match them up to the ERAs, and only post those that have been deposited. And vice versa, if you have a deposit but you don't have ERAs or EOBs, that can create a falsely elevated accounts receivable. We'll take on practices and they're often asking us, hey, can you take on our accounts receivable from the old billing team? And the struggle with this is that you may have a situation where the accounts receivable has ballooned up, but the money was already deposited in your bank, but you've struggled to get EOBs, especially from these small payers. And so it looks like you've got an accounts receivable problem, but really what you have is a bank reconciliation problem, right? Because you've received the money, but never posted it. And so that is really, really key in identifying and making sure that you're posting what you can post and finding EOBs if they are missing. So payers send money all the time without an actual EOB. And so you really, really want to make sure that process is down. It's not always easy to chase down those EOBs. All right. So capitation. So if you have an office that has capitated payments, right? So that's that lump sum. And that can come in a couple different flavors, right? Based on payments as you agree to see certain types of patients, or it can be a secondary payment that comes after your fee schedule. There's a lot of different, kind of broadly speaking in regards to how these payments may work. But for practices that do have those lump sum payments, have you worked with your payers to see if you can negotiate those rates? And then are you making sure that if you do have, say, a wrap payment or a secondary payment, that those payments are actually getting paid for all the claims that qualify? So really want to make sure that if you do have a portion of your business that has those kind of lump sum or capitated payments, that you have that process down. Number 5, front desk eligibility training. So most billing teams will tell you like, oh, you've got an eligibility problem, or they'll send an email that says Johnny's claim was denied because of eligibility. Do you have updated information? But then there's no follow-up. There's no accountability, right? If that email doesn't get answered, it just is lost in the abyss, right? And then it's not written off. It just sits on your AR. And you're not addressing the actual root cause of the front desk collection errors. And so need to really make sure, and that's why we have an issue tracker, that you have a partner who understands this and actually takes ownership to say, hey, you've got repeated eligibility issues. That's why we put these on our issue tracker. Our issue trackers are reviewed by our practices, and we ask them to do that on a weekly basis. And if there is a consistent issue, we do offer regular training and help and support creating easy to use, whether policies and procedures. Now, we do rely on our practices to actually do the implementation and hold their staff accountable, right? We're not overseeing their staff, but we do want to make sure that we're identifying those issues and working on a solution together. All right, number 6, patient collections. So who owns patient AR in your practice? And this is a big struggle, right? So as a revenue partner, right, we'll send out statements. So we'll send out the statements 1, 2, and 3. But if there's no identification of why patient AR is still sitting there, then you're going to struggle, right? And so if patient AR over 90 days continues to increase, we're alerting our partners or our practices of that, right? So we're asking them, do you want to set up a collections process? What would that look like? Here are the reports to do that. And while we don't handle calling patients or true patient debt collection, we do sit down with our practices and try and come up with a plan. Can you do credit card on file? Can you do auto payments? Can you do a process where you collect deposits up front and then refund? Again, have to have a really good refund process. So really want to make sure that we're not just sending out statements, but we're actually discussing the metrics and then building a system together. Again, it is a together activity. So it is very much, we rely on our practices to be a partner in this, but we do want to bring up these items and discuss them proactively. All right, number 7, metric review. So your billing team probably or hopefully is at least sending you reports, right? That's the bare minimum. And that is, KPIs, days in AR, denial rates, etc. Denial rates, I'll just make a quick plug, can be a struggle in some practice management softwares, and there's not easy reports. So ECW, depending on the clearinghouse that you have, doesn't always have a great denials report. So now your clearinghouse, depending on the subscription that you offer, will have denial reports. So again, have to make sure that you're paying a little bit extra for those clearinghouse subscriptions. Really important in order for you to look at denial rates. Again, you can look at kind of high level, the issue tracker, or some other ways to look at that. But again, end of month reports regarding denial rates will depend on your practice management software. So obviously, bare minimum is that we've got metrics. We're sending those out. We always want to make sure that our practices know that we are here. We can sit down and discuss that. Some of our practices choose to do that. Others are kind of in steady state and like to just look at the numbers and then move on or schedule time if there's an issue. But as a new practice or as a practice that's growing, you want to make sure that you have the option to sit down and review those metrics, identify the KPI projects you're going to put into place if something is out of benchmark. Billing is manual and billing is not going to be perfect. And there are things that are going to come up and that you have to address. And so you want to make sure that you're discussing those and have an opportunity to work together on a solution. All right. Finally, a true revenue partner bridges the gap between the billing office and the clinic. So we all understand that revenue cycle is not just a back office function, right? It starts the moment that patient calls to schedule a patient appointment. And so that entire workflow is really, really important, right? Are they doing eligibility? Are they getting correct information? Are they identifying patients who should be self-pay? Are they collecting copays upfront? Like all of that is really, really important. And so your billing team should be a resource and a guide helping you through addressing those workflow issues. Again, it is still a partnership. So oftentimes they're not going to be the ones who are implementing the entire thing, but they can guide and help support you in making sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. All right. So last question I have for you guys is really just to understand, do you guys have a billing team or a revenue management partner? So take a look at these 8 things. And as always, hopefully this helps you guys assess your current partner and make sure that you have what you need in order to grow and be successful for many years to come. If you are looking for a new team, head on over to natrevmd.com. The top right-hand corner does offer a metric review for practices that qualify. All right, have a great week.